My name is Christopher Fee. My pronouns are they, she, and he, and I am a volunteer with UPlift Black and the coordinator for UPlift Proud. UPlift Black is rooted in 2S LGBTQIA+ inclusivity, and as such, we are working to help to uplift queer voices within the broader community, as well as within the Black community specifically. We are working to ensure that everyone shares power in space. UPlift believes that diverse communities thrive. They are places where everyone is honored, has dignity, and is able to be their authentic selves without persecution. This Pride Month, we are doing a series that will showcase powerful Black queer voices within the community. Often, Pride spaces are white-centric. We are either fighting for queer rights or Black rights, but we are never fighting for both. In 2016, when Black Lives Matter stopped the Pride Parade in Toronto, many of my white queer friends suggested that it was not their place to do so. But I know that that's not true, because Black queer people exist. What about the people that sit at the intersection of Black and queer identities? As a white, queer person, I know that I hold power. I am listened to, at the very least, during Pride Month. My experience is not overlooked in conversations about queer and trans rights. So I want to make sure to use my voice to uplift the experiences I do not know. I want to know more about what it means to be Black and queer. I can help by giving the space to have these meaningful conversations. Please enjoy this series of conversations with Black queer folks who are out in the world being authentically Black and queer and proud. Listen, learn, and activate.
So the very first question that I would like to ask you is about you. So I want you to tell us about yourself in your own way. Tell us who you are, any identifiers that you might use, what communities you're part of, things like that. Anything about you that you would like for us to know.
Well, thank you so much, Christopher, for you taking time to interview me and provide access with the interpreter. Thanks so much as well for the interpreter. Access is key to me, access is my life. Without it, my life can't go forward. Who I am? Well, I was born and raised in Toronto, and I grew up with a single mom and one brother who I'm really close with. It was just the three of us. And my mom is my number one inspiration, because she was a deaf mom who moved here from another country. She moved here from Guyana to start a new life, to start her family here. Her family was all over the world, Europe, America, and Guyana. And my mom was the only one here in Toronto who decided to raise my brother and I and give us opportunities in the city. However, Toronto is a tough place to grow up in as a single mom with two kids. There's a massive age gap between my brother and I. He's obviously a Black hearing boy, and I'm a female deaf queer woman who signs. And my brother, he would speak and I would use ASL, and oftentimes communication between us would break down, and maybe I would feel left out because my mom and my brother could communicate and I couldn't communicate as much. So it was a big struggle for the three of us. But my mom, again, is my number one inspiration because she always encouraged me to value my identities. She saw me struggle with my identities. She saw society kind of make me lose my self-esteem. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm deaf, I'm queer, all of these identities work together to create multiple barriers for me. And it was difficult for me to chase my dreams. I really didn't allow myself to dream. I felt limited as a kid. So my mom and my brother always said, nope, you can do whatever you want. You can break those barriers. You can show the world who you are, show those identities and be proud. And that's why I love them both so much. They're my number ones in my life. If they weren't here, I think my life would be completely different. So I was born and raised with the name Natasha. So my teachers would assume that I was not Black because they would see my name, Natasha. Natasha is a Russian name. And my middle name is actually a French name. And then my last name is a Muslim name. And that last name means red wine of God. So when people would see me, they would be shocked. They're like, what? That's Natasha Bacchus? Okay. And I would be like, why is everyone so confused? That's my given name. And people would just assume I was not Black. And then when they would see me, you could always tell on their faces that they would be confused. I just remember that. Oh, that's such a memory. And so I ended up changing my name to Courage because Courage really matches exactly who I am. I had to face so much adversity I had to break down so many barriers just for safety and happiness and my freedom and independence. So I feel like courage is exactly who I am. And my sign name, which is this, a teacher had given it to me. It meant Natasha. And my friend, through the Deaf Olympics, which I was involved in, they're from Sweden. They asked me why I have that sign name. They're like, that it doesn't really match your personality. And this was a white, hard of hearing person who knew ASL and could clearly see that that sign name I was given was just a very generic one that didn't really match my personality. And my teacher had given me that sign name because they thought I had an attitude. But I felt like that didn't match me because I am a very resistant person. You know, I challenge any barriers that are given me. So I felt like that sign name was very triggering for me. It wasn't who I was, and it was given to me in a negative connotation. And as I kind of researched the process of decolonization, I realized that I've been code switching my entire life. When I've been talking with white people, with hearing people, people who weren't of my similar identities, I was just always code switching until 2022, when the Black Lives Matter movement started happening. I really engaged in some deep self-reflection. It was such a heavy time for me to begin that process of decolonization. And I started working with a lot of Indigenous deaf people, and I gained really some close friends there who influenced me and who told me about the important process of truth and reconciliation. And that influenced me to really prioritize decolonization, both within myself and my work. And that's when I started using the name Courage. So I am a deaf Olympian. I am a runner. I love track and field. I love running. That's my safe space. Because, you know, growing up, I always struggled with my identity and the barriers and feeling limited. I felt like there was no opportunities for me to really take off. But running helped me gain self-esteem. I got to compete with other athletes. It didn't matter whether they were hearing or deaf. I could beat them all. And they didn't believe I was deaf, but they were wrong. Right? I lost, they didn't respect me, but when they saw me compete, that's when they did. So I'm a 3-time deaf Olympian. I'm super proud of that. That is my most precious moment and most precious memory in my life. And then I started getting into the theater world, maybe around 2005, just a little bit, just basic things. And then 2019, I started getting more opportunities in theater with full deaf casts. And that was a challenge for me because I grew up as an athlete. And then going into the theater world was completely overwhelming. I was trying to figure out, you know, how to put on characters and how to make it feel authentic and how to, you know, I just felt like it was strange at the beginning, but I had to break all the rules and norms that I was taught. And here I am now as a stage actor. And I'm going to be flying to France for a deaf film festival where I'm going to be meeting more actors. And it's just going to be such an amazing experience. And then when I'm back home, my director for this play that I was working on called Black Drum told me that I should be, I went to France. And then after that experience, the director told me that once I come back, I should start continuing in the theater and film world even more. And I started signing more contracts just within Canada. And my skills started growing within acting and on stage. And now here I am from 2019 to 2022. I've been multidisciplinary since then. I have been doing mostly acting in different roles like storytelling and musical. I've been doing monologue style. And another hat that I've been wearing is my consultancy work and an advocacy work for my community, LGBTQIA plus community and the Black community and the Indigenous community and all of these communities that are within the deaf community that I am involved in. I'm also a deaf interpreter in theater. And I create vlogs as well, disseminating information to the deaf community through videos. And I'm a mixed media artist as well. I just started working in that discipline, and it's been successful thus far. I'm hoping to continue in that area. And in terms of my identity's been a challenge for me, obviously, as I've explained. I was just involved in a meeting with another group, which hit me hard because I was so emotional because I recognize that access is never going to be 100% achieved in Canada. Within the arts community, I mean, the arts community is huge for hearing people, for the queer community, and for everyone else. But in my community, we are tiny. and the access that's out there isn't matching our needs. Canada is so behind. And I realized how far behind Canada is in terms of access and how much farther there is to go. And Canada will make a few steps forward and then go a few steps back, right? We'll get interpreters somewhere, but then we won't get interpreters elsewhere. We'll get interpreters, but then nobody will sign, you know? So Alexander Graham Bell, who we all know, was someone who very much influenced the oral movement of colonization of deaf people in preventing sign language from taking off. And that really affected Canada to this day. And I was just really reflecting on that, how far behind Canada is. And I hate that. I wish Canada could catch up. I'm so motivated to help Canada catch up. I want to increase the level of accessibility and interpretation here, but it's not happening, right? And for me, for example, English is not my first language. I struggle to understand it. My English literacy is not that strong, but I still have to use it. And yet people still use English to communicate with me. And I have to use it to communicate with hearing society. And so I feel like I am always accommodating them and nobody's always accommodating me, you know? And my passion, my dream is for the hearing world, the deaf world, whether queer or straight, doesn't matter, to have full accessibility for everyone to be able to communicate with each other with no barriers. And for that to become an achievable quality for everyone and not to have any community lag behind. I would be so happy to see that. Sometimes I cry a little bit thinking about that.
Well, that's a beautiful society. I would love to see that as well. And that's part of the work that UPlift Black wants to do. And so we admire what you're doing. It's beautiful. So you have been struggling with your identity. Is that with regard to queerness specifically?
All of my identities, to be honest. I mean, firstly, I'm a Black woman, because I was involved with a lot of the Black community in, the hearing world too, as a runner and as a track and field a person. A lot of athletes are very active in the civil rights movement. And whenever I would compete, I would just get so frustrated because the hearing community just would not respect me because I was deaf. And I'd be like, look, I'm Black, just like you. We face the same barriers. And they're like, no, you're not. And I would be shocked. I'd be like, what? I would talk to my mom and my brother and they would get the same respect, but I just would not. People would be like, whatever. And I just really started to understand that it doesn't, especially the older generations. So I would start to see maybe a difference in generational outlooks, but I would still feel like that lack of respect and equality was there even within my community as a Black person. And, Black people have been fighting to be equal with white people for so long, but the Black community itself has been so divided. They've forgotten to team up with other Black people in other communities, such as the Black deaf community. We've been divisive against ourselves. And some of my worst experience of bullying has been with Black people. It's been awful. I try to defend myself and I try to explain that we should be working together. We should be friends. And it was not received. People would refuse. People are scared of what they don't know. People would be like, oh, you're friends with courage. I'm scared of courage, and they would just be scared of me, maybe because I was spoken out or I don't know, but I've been feeling so isolated. When I'm with my larger family, they'll just talk around me and I just feel like I'm not in control. And that's how it's been within the Black community primarily.
That seems kind of like a common thing. I know talking to Shelley, for example, she's mentioned that, the Black community has found it hard to accept queerness in some ways, maybe more than currently the white community is, right? And so that's kind of what I'm seeing here in a similar way, that, deafness is not being regarded as Black, even though you are Black and you are deaf.
Exactly. Yeah. So, my Black identity was something I really struggled with because I know I'm Black. Obviously, I know I'm a woman. I know I'm deaf. And my queer identity came a lot later. I would feel like it came in my 20s when I started liking men at first. And then later on in my 20s, when I started socializing with more of the community, I started realizing myself who I was. But in high school, I had gay friends in high school, but I never really allowed myself to explore that part of me. And I thought it would be dangerous to out myself. And then when I hit my 20s, and I really started socializing with the queer community, and I started realizing who they were, and I realized, oh my gosh, I want to be involved, and I thought, oh, I can experiment with my identity. I can see, what my preferences are. And I felt so much free. There was no shame in that area. And my brother and my mom knew it from the beginning. They knew I was queer from the beginning. They knew it. And when I told them, they were like, yeah, we knew you like both men and women. It's so obvious. And I was like, come on, seriously? They loved and supported me from the beginning, right? I brought them to a queer friend's house, and they were noticing all the different identities that were there. And they said, oh, this person's queer, this person's lesbian, this person's gay. And I was like, yeah. And they'd be like, okay, cool. That's why I love them so much. They're so accepting. They're not judgmental at all. And they both have been involved within the queer LGBTQIA plus community, like independent of me. And I've seen how open-minded they are. And that's really helped my identity flourish.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that your family is so important to you. And it's,
of course. Yeah.
it might have been hard.
My brother and my mom are my number one. I absolutely cannot survive without them.
I love that. They are both hearing as well. And so they learned, is your brother older than you?
No, I'm older than him.
Okay. So
I have two brothers, one on my mom's side and one on from my father's marriage. And the one on my father's side has the same last name as I do. I'm not really close with my father's side, but my brother from my mom's marriage and I are a lot closer. So we grew up together because obviously we grew up with our mom and we see each other every day. We lived in the same home together. So yeah, there's three of us and I'm the eldest of two brothers. Yeah.
Did your mom, how did they go about learning to communicate with you as a deaf person?
Okay, well, when my mom found out I was deaf, I was 1 year old at the time. And I don't know why my school never provided access for my mom to learn sign language. Like that just was never there for her. And my elementary school knew my mom was a single mom and all of that. And I asked my mom, why didn't you learn to sign when I was a kid? And she said, there was no time. I was working all the time and to support you guys. And I realized that maybe my dad should have supported my mom in like maybe monetary support or something. So she would have had more time to communicate with me. But anyways, my mom and I growing up, like we would argue a lot until high school. And teachers would sometimes call my mom to complain about me, and my mom would like believe my teachers. And there just was no communication like during childhood. That really hurt me. But then once I started being involved in the athletes world, that helped me to kind of grow my identity and kind of grow a backbone and to help refute those claims that people were making about me. And it was feeling very internalized, but then I would every day just go out running and relieve that tension and relieve that stress because I didn't really want to be home and I didn't really want to be at school. So after school was done, I would take off to the track and field and I would just go running, and my parents, my mom and my brother would be like waiting for me to see when I got home. I'd get home at like 11. So I'd be scared. Obviously, she's a deaf Black woman. She's running out by herself. And then I would finally get home and then my mom would be able to go to sleep. So it was very sweet of her.
That's nice. I am wondering how did you come to find community with deaf people? Was there a way that you were able to learn sign language for yourself as well? Because since your mom wasn't the one who was teaching you, how did you find community?
So going back, so I didn't use ASL growing up. I used pluralism sign language, which means that you use a variety of modes to communicate. Sometimes you speak a little bit, sometimes you use some signs, sometimes you use basically a variety of ways to communicate and just do your best. So I wasn't a strong ASL user because there was a lot of racism associated with the language. And at that time, I wasn't comfortable with saying I'm an ASL user because I felt like that wasn't something that matched my identity at that time, and I really wanted to be honest with my truth. And so pluralism, that mode of communication, just means that you use whatever language you can. So for example, I learned international sign as a Black Deaf Olympian. I learned Black sign language, and I use like all these different forms. So I don't identify as an only ASL user. And so anyways, going back, when my mom found out I was deaf, when I was in preschool, I was at the Bob Rumball Center, which is which is a center for deaf people. And I started learning ASL there in preschool. For grades 1 to 8, I went to the Metro Toronto School for the Deaf, which is now closed down. I loved that school. And I remember when I went in, like grade 1, and I saw people signing, I was like in shock. I was like, I wanted to take off and start learning. And I learned ASL sign language so quickly because my communication up until then was limited. My world was quiet. I would play by myself while my mom would work, and I would watch my mom on her phone or do whatever. And I would just play by myself. Right. And then when I got to school, I was so excited. I got to socialize with other deaf people. And that's really where I found the identity, and I took off. But unfortunately, like I mentioned, MTSD did shut down because the deaf community has been growing a lot smaller. In this area. They've been going off to other areas, or they've been moving away, or maybe there isn't a strong relationship with family members, and so they've been going to other areas. But it was a city public school. It was like publicly funded, and I don't understand why the public school system took over and decided to close that school. I don't agree with that, and I think it is so unfortunate because now that area has been repurposed for other reasons, and it could have just been continued. And my whole world was there. Everyone loved it, right? I did love it, but I mean, it's been taken over. So
that's too bad. It's hard to hear. That is very sad.
Yeah, definitely very sad. I cried. It was my favorite school. You know, that school gave me an opportunity. It gave me the track and field opportunity. It gave me an opportunity to become a leader. My PE teacher was a lesbian. She was hearing and white, but she knew ASL, and she believed in me, you know, and that's one of my most cherished memories. And to be honest, I don't know where she is today. I haven't heard anything about her, and I really hope her well. And I know she hopes well for me too.
Absolutely. I have a couple of questions, I think. The first one is, within the deaf community, is there a lot of racism that is kind of happening, you know, within the deaf community?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, yes. I have so much trauma. Oh my goodness, from that. I remember in grade 9, in high school, I went to Northern Secondary School. There are several deaf programs in Ontario, and I decided to go to Northern Secondary because I heard they had a good track and field team. They had a mix of people who were like hard of hearing and oral and sign language users, a really diverse amount of people. They had a big queer community. They have, you know, Indigenous community, like lots of people there. And it's within the city as well. So I was really interested. Anyways, out of the blue, one day I was with all my deaf teammates, a hugely diverse amount. And I was sitting, and they were all kind of around me, and we were in the cafeteria, you know, just chatting. And then somehow across from me, this white, deaf, oral, but still sign user, they were a white Canadian. I think they were Greek originally. Anyways, so she told me in front of all my friends, she said, "Hey, hi, Nigger." And I was like, what just happened? And everyone saw that and said nothing. Nobody said anything. I was shocked. I was furious. I was like, what do I do? Do I slap her? Or do I give her the finger? Do I walk away? Anyways, so I remember my mom always said to me, and I had her voice in the back of my head, and she would always say, any trouble in school, just walk out. Just walk out. Because she knows what I'm like. She knows how quickly things can blow up. And she said, just walk out. And I was like, oh, what do I do? Do I beat her up? Do I do all, is it worth it? Is the trouble worth it? And I could hear my mom's voice in the back of my head. I was like, my mom works hard for me. You know, she works to support the kids. What do I do? I was like looking at everyone. Everyone was silent, just staring at me. I thought they were my friends. I thought they had my back, but nope. And I decided, I stood up and I said, don't even call me Nigger again. And you go fuck back to Greece. And I walked out. And the next day, I didn't hang out with those again. I just ignored them. And they were all feeling so bad. They were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I just ignored them. For 2 weeks, I didn't say a word to them. I just kept to myself. I went to class. I went to cafeteria. I went to training for 2 weeks straight. And my mom had no idea. I never told her. I could not tell that to my mom. I would not be able to tell that to my brother as well. I think they wouldn't understand either. I really kept that in myself. And I would just let it out whenever I would run. I would run and I would run so hard because I'd be so angry. I would just let all that pain out. And my coach would be asking me, are you okay? And I'd be sweating and I would just be like furious, but that's how I let it out. And I said, no, I hate this school. I fucking hate this school. And I told them everything. And they totally understood what happened because they listened to me and they knew that while I was training, I had all these emotions inside. I was 14 at that time, right? I was just a kid. So now when I see the white deaf community, I still see these people around me and say, oh, we're not this, we're not that. I know that they won't always have my back. Right. I know I'm always telling them, but I'm saying that like your responsibility, the responsibility to become anti-racist is on you. It's not on me, and I still see all of this activity today. I still have so many issues with the white deaf community. I've called it out so many times. I've had to have so many meetings, but I'm tired. The deaf schools in Ontario, there's 3 of them. They're so white. They're completely white. Right. And it's only the mainstream communities that have that are more diverse because people feel safer there. And if I was to go back to those schools again, I feel like I would still be experiencing those racisms to this day. My mom and my brother are the ones that I trust. And I feel like everyone else, the racism is there. And let me just add one more thing. So the 3 deaf schools in Ontario, so I've been going to them throughout my childhood for sports competitions and stuff. And I never felt welcome there. I never felt welcome. I always felt marginalized there. They were very cliquey. And I felt like the reason was because I was Black. Plus, I was a city girl from Toronto and the others weren't in the downtown area. And maybe they looked down on me from that. It was very frustrating. Making friends with white deaf people in those schools was so hard. I showed them who I was. If you don't accept me, that's on you.
Well, that's very courageous. I love that.
Yeah. That's why I am.
I love that. It's beautiful. And you are beautiful. And I also, now moving into, your 20s, was when you kind of discovered / figured out that you were queer. And so at that time, you come to understand yourself and maybe a little bit more self-assured. And so you, how did you navigate queerness within the deaf community as well? Because I know that, for example, a lot of the things that are, a lot of the signs that are used are very binary. And I'm just wondering, there's mother and father, but there's not really a parent sign. And how would you do that? That kind of thing. So how do you navigate, I guess, queerness within deafness as well?
So I noticed that the white colonized person expects labels. English as a whole expects labels.
Yeah.
I'm not a person who labels things. Tell me who you are and I'll accept it. I judge a person based on their character. That's it. And I remember one day, a good friend of mine, they were deaf and woman, and they had a boyfriend who was also deaf, and they came over to my house and my mom said, oh, your friends are here. And I said, okay. And I go and I see 2 of my friends in the kitchen. They're from high school. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing here? And they were so excited to see me. And I was like, why are you in my house? So anyway, so we go out and we were just chatting. And I was really confused why they were there. But anyways, we were talking about our queer identities. And her boyfriend said, I think Courage is someone who is bisexual. And I was like, what do you mean? And we were talking more about their experimenting with their sexual identity. And they said, well, if you like this person and you kiss them back, that means that you are attracted to that gender or you're attracted to that identity. And so I didn't really understand, I think, what bisexuality meant at that time. And so they were really explaining to me what their experiences were and how they understood what certain experiences like label made them in the queer community. And I started really understanding that, oh, maybe I'm part of that community, right? And now I feel like a lot of people are really intent on like labeling themselves, whether it's with pronouns or tell me all of the identities that you identify yourself with. But after I figured out my queer identity, I still label myself as just courage. You know, I'm not comfortable with putting labels on myself. I am Black, I am queer, I am deaf, I use she, I use her. Like, this is not something I'm constantly putting out into the world because they're just words. Colonized people think words are so important. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that. Yeah. So
That makes
that's who I
sense.
am.
I love that. I love that, you know, there's a lot of people, especially, you know, younger people like from Gen Z, who are saying, I choose just not to use labels. Like, labels are outdated. They're, you know, we don't need to use them, things like that. So I
Exactly.
appreciate that, right? And there are a lot of people who just use like their name, for example, like Alok, you know, is like, I don't identify as man, woman, I'm Alok, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, just names. You know, I love meeting people who they'll tell me their names and I'll be like, tell me more about who you are. Tell me about your likes and dislikes. And that's how I figure out their identity, quote unquote. I figure out who they are, not their labels. You know, I feel like, I mean, I don't necessarily memorize people's pronouns or stuff like that. I mean, I do have I do respect people's pronouns and stuff like that, but I still feel like I want to understand who a person was. I prefer to see them in person, and that's what inspires me. Words, what are words? You know, they're nothing. Honestly, I avoid the colonized mindset so much because I feel like focusing on decolonization is so important for me. And I just wish that everybody would focus on decolonization and start new again, start with a brand new slate. We've been running a colonized world, and that's awful. You know, I'm done with that.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel you. Yes. Yes. So, you know,
Yes.
keeping that in mind, and I just want to be cognizant of time as well. I want to know, you know, what is joy to you? What, you know, brings you joy? What is queer joy? What is Black joy? What is deaf joy? What is joy to you? What's joy?
I think my joy is when, so for example, my brother's name is Jermaine, and he just became a father, right? So I'm an aunt. I had a niece born last Tuesday, and that gave me so much joy because I can show her who I am. And I can show her my identity and how I choose to show it. I can show her all the adversity I've overcome. And that gives me so much joy. And I hope that my niece will look up to me. And that just gives me so much joy. I'm just so ready to share my story with her and to tell her how I grew up and how I overcame all these odds and how I became successful and how to find joy anywhere. And I hope that she'll be able to cherish her identity too, because she's a girl and because she's mixed race. She's half Black, half brown. She's half Guyanese and half Sri Lankan. So being mixed race, she's half Christian and half Hindu as well. You know, mixed religious background, and I'm deaf. You know, I kind of understand that struggle of identity, but maybe she'll feel like she won't connect with me at the beginning because I'm deaf, but I want to give her that positive mindset from the beginning. And I'm also so proud of my brother and my mom. You know, my brother really wanted to become a father because I can't have kids. And so they gave me this gift of being an aunt, and that gave me joy.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's beautiful. It sounds like as well, I was going to ask what, you know, in the world, we are trying to decolonize, and it can feel really heavy sometimes. And I just want to know what gives you hope. And I'm thinking that, you know, this, your niece gives you hope, but I want to know, like, is it like because of children, or is it because, like, what gives you hope for change in the future?
Well, what gives me hope is seeing people decolonize themselves, people who are formally closed-minded, open up their mind. and people who eradicate all the isms, the racisms, and all the plethora of other isms that are there, and people who are just full of love, and people who are full of safety and respect, and who celebrate together. Seeing those people give me joy. When I see people of various backgrounds every day, I can't imagine, what they've been through, the identity formulations and the financial issues and the family issues and the religion. Like, we don't know people's battles, right? We don't know what they're fighting. We don't know how they've been oppressed day to day. The world needs to stop. And because the colonized world has been forcing us to see things in a negative light. And if we put that aside and see things in a positive light, then we can continue advocating for each other without any judgments, right? For example, my niece, she's a brand new generation, and my hope for her is that she'll be more free than I ever was.
That is, it's so beautiful. Thank you. I love that. It's absolutely the hope, right? Like, it's very exciting to look forward and see a world where we just accept each other as we are, and just, we just are, we are human, right?
Yes, just love and humanity, just number one.
Yeah.
And queer people as well, Black people, whatever, everyone's souls are beautiful. Just look at your soul. White people, whatever, everyone just needs to stop and just love and respect. This oppression is awful. It's awful to experience, and it's awful to see. And it scares me off, from participating in the world.
Yeah. Okay, final question. At the end of it, I would like to give you some space to say anything that you feel was missed, or you need to say, or if you'd like to plug a couple of things for yourself or anything like that, you can kind of add it here if there's anything you'd like to add.
Okay, well, so my dream has come true in that I'm working with 4 Black deaf artists to go to France for a film festival. For the first time in history, Black deaf performers in this arts festival in France. And that means a lot to me. And I see that my cohort, I see how happy they are. And I see the new hope that's renewed inside them. And I love them so much. And that's just what's really giving me hope. They've accepted me for who I am, and I'm happy that we all said we could go together, because for me, I feel so honored to have this opportunity.
Oh, I'm so glad. Is there a way that we here will be able to see this event?
My group will be filming everything that's going on there, because we want to show Theater Pass Murai, who we're working with, what we're doing there. So this afternoon, we were actually just talking with TPM and asking them, for this show, how can we, bring it forward? And we were talking about different options, and then I would bring it back to my group. And so my goal is for us to have this show in person at TPM, at Theater Pass Murai. I don't know when it's going to happen, but that is possibly in the works. Fingers crossed.
Well, I appreciate this so much. I am very sorry for making you cry.
No, I'm a very vulnerable person, and I told you my truth, and I cry. That's just who I am. I'm a vulnerable person. I cry a lot, and that just shows you that I'm caring about what I'm talking about, that I'm emotional. I'm not fake, I do care, and that's just who I am in the world. That's who you are. That's who I am. I'm telling you my truth, and Shelly Ann knows this as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
crying is brave.
Absolutely, yeah. It is. I was going to say, it takes vulnerability to be courageous, right?
Absolutely.
So it's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And we appreciate you taking the time out today. Thank you to Anissa as well. It has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, big heart. Thank you. Thank you both. For making me feel like I was safe enough to tell you who I was. Thank you.
Thank you.